Okay, this is Josh Duncan from Zenoss. I'm here with Kent Erickson, and we've been talking about global event management. So, Kent, let's get started. How about a little introduction to Zenoss and its event management?
Sure, Josh. Events are one of the critical things that we need to manage in a data center, and Zenoss does a lot to help us with that. First of all, events come in from a variety of different places, and when they come in, they sometimes need to be extended. We need to add the device name to an event, or we need to extend the description, and Zenoss does those type of things. But Zenoss also helps us just understand this flood of events. It does that by classifying them. Many times we can classify them as something that just needs to go into history and never be looked at unless we're doing research, or it's an event that is just completely nonsense and we can just discard it forever. Zenoss also handles deduplication automatically. For example, if the port is down and we're checking it every couple of minutes, we don't need to get a new event be notified again every time we find out 5 minutes later that the port is still down. So Zenoss will automatically deduplicate and roll those up into something that says it's happened many, many times. It'll also automatically close events. So if I have an open event on the port down situation again, and that port then is recovered and brought back up, Zenoss will automatically close the event, so no operator needs to manually handle it. Now, the other big functions that Zenoss does is something called transforms. And with transforms, Zenoss can take an event and generate additional events that replace the event and better describe it. For example, it can run a test, react to that event, either run a test, a diagnostic test to see if a situation really exists and how bad it is, or it can automatically react to an event. And the classic reaction, of course, is notifying somebody that something has happened. The other thing that Zenoss does for event processing is it provides us multiple views. Of course, there's one big list of the events, and that's what a lot of people in data centers look at, is that one big list of events with the highest priority events up at the top. But with Zenoss, you can also look at events for an individual device, or for a group of similar devices, or in a business service, or in a location, and see the events from those different places.
All right. So continuing along these lines, where does Zenoss capture all these events from? Are these devices that it's monitoring and managing? Or essentially, explain the event flow into Zenoss.
Sure, Josh. Let's start with where do events come from. Events are generated all over the place in the data center. Individual devices generate them. Network devices send out SNMP traps or syslog events. On a Windows server or on a Linux server, there's individual event logs in that are generating events. And Zenoss is able to work with the management interfaces on all of those systems in order to collect those events. And it does that, of course, without having to install an agent on those devices. But there's a second critical source of events in the data center that we're becoming very, very familiar with, and those are sub-managers. And Zenoss is a manager of these sub-managers, a manager of managers, if you will. So let me run through a couple of examples of that, Josh. vSphere is a great one. An individual vSphere installation is actually managing dozens or even hundreds of individual ESX servers and virtual machines and resource pools, etc. And all of those individual things will be generating events, but the single vSphere manager will be doing that. Zenoss interfaces with the vSphere manager, so we don't have to talk to each and every one of those individual systems on a one-by-one basis. Another good example is the Cisco UCS, where we can talk to a single fabric interconnect controller and collect events for all of the blades, all of the fans that make up a UCS system. We also see a lot of people putting in very domain-specific expert systems for managing a SQL Server or a SharePoint installation, where those events are rolled up. And what customers are asking us for, and what we're able to do for them, is to build a business service view, where we take the events from vSphere, and we take the events from UCS, and we take the events from a SQL Server or a JMX installation, and roll those up and give people a view of just the events that make up a business service.
Okay, as we started out this conversation, it was around global event management, and one of the observations that I had was we have some clients and customers that are deploying multiple Zenosses. Why would one do that, and how does that play a part in your global event management?
Okay, great question, Josh. There are a number of reasons that people install multiple Zenoss instances, and just let me run through a couple of them. One that's fairly obvious is You run into a device limitation with Zenoss around 25,000 devices. So if you're managing more than 25,000 devices, you might deploy more than one Zenoss installation. Or if you've initially deployed Zenoss on a small server and you want to put on another small server at less than 25,000 regions, you can get this horizontal scaling with Zenoss by deploying multiple instances. There are some other reasons, though, that people do that as well. They can have different policy boundaries within their installation. For example, they might set up one Zenoss to run on a 5-minute interval, looking at network devices to check performance metrics, but they might be checking another set of server metrics on a 2-minute interval. So they'll have different, and that's an example of policy where they'll have two different Zenoss installations running slightly different management policies to manage those different things. They might have that networking and server boundary. We've got some customers who have one Zenoss installation deployed for networking devices and one for server devices, just because gosh, there are different groups that bought it, and so they all each want to have their own. Then we have some customers who have different Zenosses deployed in different geographies. We've got a customer who's got one deployed in Dallas to manage the United States and another one in London to manage Europe.
All right, so if you have these multiple deployments, what type of option does Zenoss have to still give you that global view into all of your events?
Yeah, great question. There's a new function that we call a Zenoss Event Consolidator. It's a function that lets me selectively roll up events from multiple Zenoss installations into one global console. And when I say selectively roll them up, what I mean is that you might not want to see all of the server events on the global console. You might want to see a subset of them. You might not want to see all of the networking events on that global console. You might want to see a subset of them. So you've got some filters that can take in place where you roll it up into that top level system. The second thing that people ask for when they do this, and the Event Consolidator does, is that if I acknowledge an event, if I assign it to somebody to work in a sense, that assignment needs to roll up. So no matter whether I assign it at the local level, or I assign it at the global level, or whether I respond to it at the local level, or add some comments to it at the local level, those things are reflected in the other installation. And that's what the event consolidation feature lets me do, is take those people, for those people who have multiple Zenoss installations, provide one central view that I can manage from for the entire enterprise.
All right, great. Thanks, Ken. Really appreciate your time today.
Okay.